Oh, you know what? One more thing. Sorry. You want to make this.
No.
Yeah. Because there's a delay.
All right, can you hear me, everyone?
I can.
Okay, it looks like we are live right now. So I am going to share my screen to show the agenda and the minutes so that we can get started that way. So bear with me while I share my screen. Okay, so right now you should see the agenda in front of you. Does everyone see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what I had sent earlier to all of you. So we can go right down the order. I think having a little more structure is good for these types of meetings. So as far as public comment, we'll get to that, but we are following the same sort of structure that the public comment has for city council meetings, where people have until 3 or 4 p.m. depending on the type of meeting, but they have until today to submit any written comments to myself, and then I could read those, but we haven't received any public comments through that avenue. So I think in the future, if we do have more meetings, we can think about having public comment via people coming onto the Zoom meeting that we vet and make sure that they're legitimate residents and not just someone trying to spam us or something like that. So I think with that, we can move forward and call to order. So Nadine, if you'd like to.
Call to order.
Okay, so we can do roll call. We have Nadine Gomez.
Here.
Miriam Jackson.
Here.
Renee Rahutsky.
Here.
And Wilder Ritz and Andrew Scholler.
I'm gonna get her. I'm gonna shut her out.
So Wilder Ritz and Andy Scholl are currently absent. So if we would like to do motions to excuse both of them, we could do that.
Okay. I move to excuse both Andrew and Wilder.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? None. All right. So now we have the review of meeting summary reports from February 3rd.
We need one other person. Renee wasn't there.
That's right. Yep. So
I was just on the phone, but not officially there.
Oh, that's right. She was on the phone, so it doesn't count. Okay.
So I think in this case, we can hold on to these minutes as a public record and then approve them at the next meeting.
Okay.
So we have the minutes right here. We can approve them at the next meeting for any details that we want to update. But essentially, the information that we talked about covers all of our major items. Are there any comments that anyone wants to make for the minutes?
Just do we need to motion to save them for later and vote on them, or we just do that?
No, we'll just do that at the next meeting.
Okay.
All right. So public comment. So far, I haven't received any comments from the public through our virtual meeting directions that we've been giving residents on the city website. So in the future, if people do make comments, they submit them to me prior to the meeting and I would read those out. And also if people wanted to be on the meeting, we could allow that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Let me check to see. All right, so I think now we can move into old business. We have the ad hoc committee update. So far, the ad hoc committee has been meeting pretty regularly comparatively since the COVID-19 has started. They have recently began a sustainability planning cohort with ICLEI. So one of the perks of our membership with ICLEI is the ability to periodically listen in on their webinars and different trainings that they have for sustainability areas of focus. And so one of them that they had this spring was sustainability planning. So this is where they bring in guest speakers from different parts of the country that focus in sustainability at the local level, and they talk about the different things that they've been able to accomplish and help us with some things we might want to incorporate as far as best practices. So far it's been pretty beneficial. We've been able to be on the calls with the ICLEI staff, and the recordings are available afterwards, so we can share them with the ad hoc committee, and then also with the sustainability commission. If you guys would like that as well, I can share that as well.
Sure, I would enjoy seeing if it's something I'll understand.
I think so. It's very conversational, the type of presentation. It's open to Q&A, and all the people there are local government administrators or people that are directly involved in that process. So they are really good to talk to as far as learning from experience and getting a sense of how they did those things, I think is really helpful. Renee, were you on any of those calls?
I haven't been to any of the live webinars because I have a conflict, but I've reviewed, I think, all but the latest one.
So you
And
were
I've been-
you were able to watch the recordings, I guess?
Correct.
Okay.
I was able to watch the recordings. And I was on the last meeting of the ad hoc committee itself. It's a little hard to, most people aren't on camera, so it's hard to have conversations. Was one thing I noticed about our last meeting. Don't have the visual cues of I want to speak, or have maybe do rounds or something, or have people raise hands using one of the functions. But the work the ad hoc committee is doing is great.
I agree. I think there is some learning curves or getting people adjusted to the new structure and systems. I think also the new platforms that are out there, and that luckily we have a plan here with Zoom, so we can use Zoom now for those types of meetings. So hopefully in the future it'll be more interactive, and we'll have screen share, like the camera option, more easily available. So I know in the past I hadn't been using my own camera, but now that I'm able to, I think that'll be really beneficial. So as far as the plan for the ad hoc committee, Andrews Boateng at Davie is still helping and working closely with us on the timeline or the schedule for the action plan. So we had initially at the beginning of the year set out to have something definitively in our hands, or the Sustainability Commission's hands, by the end of the year. And that was the goal. So I think that COVID-19 might have threw a wrench into that goal just a little bit. I think we would still like to get as much done as we can before the end of the year, but I'm also trying to set expectations that we might not be as far along as we'd hoped by that time. So I think we're still hoping to get as much work as we can done, but we might not be completely finished with all parts of the plan by the end of the year.
That's understandable.
Well, is there anything else on the ad hoc committee before we move on to farmers market? All right, so farmers market attendance. I know we had previously talked about attending. I think the last time I addressed this item was back in February. So there's been quite a couple of changes at the market. Does anyone want to talk about those changes?
I've been to the drive-through and I really enjoyed it. I think that was the perfect way to do it. I felt very safe. Opened the trunk of my car, you know, a lot of things you could pre-purchase. If not, but I do think now that there's more variety, they do need to go outside. I understand that from the last video they put out that they might use the road and spread out. And that was the last I heard. But I think going one way, making one way one and one way the other would do it, like they said, in a circle. Sounds pretty safe to me. You know, most of the research shows outside isn't that big of a deal unless you're standing around talking face to face. Plus, everybody here will probably wear their masks. But attending, I don't know if we'll be there talking to anybody for a while.
In some ways, in some ways, farmers market's part of our community outreach, or how we, communicate what's going on with our commission. And so rethinking our communication plan is probably something that will be needed since we don't have the face-to-face opportunities that we used to.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as the layout of the farmers market on Franklin Avenue, so they are planning to push into the road. And so they're going to be talking about this item at the city council meeting this Wednesday. So we have already gone through with eliminating special events until August 1st.
Yeah.
So we're not approving any special event applications. And so we're not treating this as a special event since it's a recurring every Saturday sort of instance where they're occupying that space for a couple of hours. And so that's, I think, because we don't have any other permitting process for this type of thing, we're still using the special event application, but we're not calling it a special event. So that's kind of how we're trying to frame it and word it. But they do plan to use it every Saturday where they'll have barricades on the portion of Franklin Avenue from West College and Franklin to the Haymaker overpass. So it'll be a little bit south of that. So still allowing cars or vehicles on Franklin Avenue south to Summit Street. So if people wanted to use the parking lot to the pub or use the parking on the side of the road, they could still use that. But otherwise, we're still trying to make it work. We realize how crucial the market is. And so making sure that they're able to operate with this new plan and be socially distanced, they had to widen their scope. And so that's something we're trying to accommodate. And so I think they're limiting vendors currently to only food vendors. Is that right?
I imagine so, but I have seen who's been out at the other market, but I don't know, they may have changed for the outdoor one. I'm not sure, but it's been really nice when you see all those meat aisles empty to know that we have grass-fed and small farm-raised meat right here, and a good source of it. And so it was really, lets you know how essential that farmer's market is to our community. I know Renee talks a lot about the food warehouse, and now you see even more reason why we need that.
Mm-hmm. So I would expect the first market this Saturday. I'll probably be out there with the health department, just making sure everything's running smoothly. But as far as attendance at the market in the future, I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be, just because I don't know how soon they're going to open it up to more vendors, or whether or not they're still going to use the same layout as they're using or they're planning to use. So I guess I would recommend we just put a pin in that one until we find out more information. All right, the community outreach update. I know that we have a couple of organizations that are working hard right now to keep people connected and work to assist people as best as they can. Does anyone have an update on the Kent Environmental Council?
I do. They've been continuing to meet via Zoom for their Friday morning breakfasts. There's a consistent link for that that I've been hosting. And sometimes I'll stay, sometimes I'll give the host privileges to someone else for the meetings. And then we also hosted a Zoom meet and greet for the people who started the new Portager news vehicle, a meet and greet for them online. So I'm imagining we'll do some online kinds of things. We also did a trash pickup, actually, a socially distancing trash pickup on, I think, the weekend before Easter, where just, we usually do something like that, and the weather was nice enough. So we masked up and picked up a fair amount of trash, posted a couple of things on social media, but it wasn't a really huge event. It was just something, to try to do something out in the community. So that's pretty much it for the KEC right now.
So does that mean for the virtual breakfast, does everyone make their own breakfast?
That's coffee. Some people go and get takeout.
Yeah.
We are trying to support the Little City Grill, so we've been just ordering takeout when we can from it, just to help that, as well as other local businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They do steak night on Mondays. It's a pretty good deal.
Hey, Renee, I hope it's all right. I was curious, what was the Crooked River Environmental Network? How is that? Has that helped at all with keeping people connected, or is that being used at all?
Not yet. That was really just being created as COVID hit. So there's a mailing list. There's a whole thing about, we were trying to get a mailing list that was, had the right kentenvironmental.org address and stuff, and ended up not working out. So we have a Google group, and we have people on it, but we haven't used it yet. So that's something where I feel like we need to have a couple of events in order to bring people together again. We met, have I reported back? Yeah, since the Kent Environmental Council annual meeting and the World Cafe we did. I don't remember if I had a chance to report back on that.
Maybe not, because that happened in February, right?
Yes, so maybe I should report back on that. So for the annual meeting, the Kent Environmental Council, instead of having a theme speaker, we created a World Cafe where we had small tables with different topics. And we invited people from the community to talk about the topic of the table for maybe 45 minutes. And then people got to switch tables, and then they reported back what they shared. And so people loved being able to connect with one another. So I'm hoping to do kind of a virtual version of that using Zoom and breakout rooms and things like that going forward. But it's just, haven't had the bandwidth to make that happen. It's a lot harder to do online than in person. But the people who were there really loved it, and were hungry for similar kinds of things to connect.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I was there for, I believe that was the same one that I was there for a brief time, but it was great to see people mingle, and everyone seemed to enjoy themselves, and it was a lot of great company. So I was encouraged by it. It seemed like a really well-planned event. So Renee, you definitely shot it out of the park.
Thanks. Yeah. And now we can't do that anymore, right? At least for a while.
That's right. That's right.
It's kind of sad, but oh well, here we are.
So the
Other ways.
KSU Office of Sustainability, I've talked to Melanie and Leah a couple of times related to the Green Energy Ohio, a couple of the campaigns that they're working on right now. But other than that, that's as far as I know, the Office of Sustainability is just like the campus, just closed, and they're not doing too much right now. So I haven't heard too much from them. Has anyone heard from them at all?
I get their newsletters, but that's it.
Hmm.
I've been hiding at home. Haven't been going anywhere or talking to many people.
Mim, is there anything to report from Kent State that you would like to share? Mim, can you hear me?
Yeah. So I would like to share about what?
Is there anything you'd like to share about Kent State at all you some interactions or anything with the Office of Sustainability perhaps?
Well, you know, like a lot of other people, I've kind of been hibernating. I've just kind of been moving around a little bit locally. And I have contact with a couple of people on the faculty. I know Diacon is trying to resume in-person classes in late August. You know, we'll see how that goes because there's been a lot of very unwise people shoulder to shoulder with no masks on, which is kind of asking for it for a case spike. And I live in a college neighborhood, and I have seen a lot of people partying who have no business partying, who should be a lot more careful. So I will not be surprised if there's a big case spike. And that was a problem before this big mess with the violence for several days. So I suppose that I will have more to say, presuming that classes start again in late August. I don't know, and nobody's nobody's saying anything. I just was aware that a couple of faculty people were conducting their classes over Zoom, and that's about it.
Well, thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
So as far as family and community services, I know that the Kent Social Services is working really hard to supply food for residents in Kent. And I believe they are, if they haven't already completed the project, they're installing their new refrigerator, the refrigerated section of the building. So that's going to hopefully increase a lot more offerings that they can have and their ability to hold more. So that's great. So I know that as far as the incident command with the city, our response to COVID-19, Family and Community Services paired or partnered with Portage County as far as offering housing to first responders. So one of the potential risks that we had a month ago or a month and a half ago was that if one of our first responders was exposed to COVID and they had to self-isolate, the plan was to use a local hotel, and at that time, the people that would interact with that person would be FNCS. So they, through a partnership with Portage County. So providing that person with food and any other types of material that they would need while in the hotel room for that 2 weeks. So that was my interaction with FNCS. So I don't know, does anyone else have an update for FNCS?
No.
I just know that I got the communication, was it March? In March, how many more meals they supplied in March 2020 than March 2019. It was exponential. So I hope they got a lot of checks from people who, you know, didn't need their checks from the federal government. I'm hoping that they got a lot because they really needed it.
Absolutely, yeah. The number of meals that they've delivered compared to last year, it's dramatic. Just to think about how they would cover all that, just the number, and then they're also delivering these things. So just the amount of time it takes to deliver those, it's jaw-dropping to think from the resources they had last year to now. I don't think there's that many personnel or volunteers unless they stepped up during COVID. So it's definitely a community effort and great to see. So that's really encouraging.
Yep.
So as far as the Tree City Bulletin goes, the summer 2020 bulletin went out in the mail this past week. So I believe most people by now should have received it. Oh, not Nadine, okay.
Never get it.
No? Okay, well, Renee, it looks like you got yours.
Yes.
And
No,
so,
I did not get mine.
what was that, ma'am?
I said, no, I have not gotten mine.
Okay. Well, I think it's still being delivered. I saw a notice that it went out last week, but it usually takes about a week and a half before it gets delivered all the way through. So I think the bulletin for the summer, we didn't include a sustainability commission article just because we didn't meet in person and we didn't have a way of organizing that. So I think we could plan for the fall if everyone was open to that. I think the due date is far enough away where we have time to plan for an article. The articles for the fall are not due until July 10th. So there is time to think about what we would like to have the community read. Maybe something, well, maybe not something COVID related, because I feel like the summer bulletin was just nothing but COVID-19 articles, I felt like. But either way, it's important. It's good information. And also, Nadine and Mim, if you don't get your bulletin in the mail, you can also look at it on the city website. It's available there as well. And it's a little bit better. It's in color.
Oh, yay.
So is there any interest on an article for the fall?
I haven't thought of anything yet, but I will try to think.
We might,
World.
one of the things we might think about is people tend to do this fall cleanup where they clean their yards. So there's not habitat for a lot of the pollinators and other sorts of things. So perhaps there could be something along those lines about like environmentally friendly way of doing your lawn cleanup.
Winterizing, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it wouldn't have to be us. There's some folks at the KE, one person wrote something about pollinators and how to, like, don't mow your dandelions and things like that. So there might be something along those lines. I can see if someone would be interested in writing. There's a lot of master gardeners and things that might be able to come up with something, because it doesn't need to be us, right? We just provide the content for the actual section. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I could see if, do you know Al Barber? I don't know if he's a Kent resident. I don't think he is.
No, I don't believe so.
I think they might be out of town. He wrote a thing on pollinators in general for the Kent website, but you know, something like rethink about how you do fall cleanup might be a way of doing it to be more sustainable. I'll see if if that's something he could write on.
Yeah,
that's something useful.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, we could also maybe do something about the city transfer site for yard waste, like what's going on there. Or is there some?
You mean as far as hours?
Well, the hours have changed, but maybe more of a like why we do it and more of a meta article about why we have it and what it's for and how it's helps with sustainability.
Do you think it could be something that could be put into the idea that you had talked about previously, where it's the yard waste transfer site could help someone achieve a more sustainable yard?
Yeah, or what to, and maybe what to bring there, you know, for the fall. In the permaculture mindset, there's this idea of reducing outputs and inputs. Like if you can recycle something or reuse something and use what you have to feed the next cycle of what you have, then you're conserving energy within the system. And so if, like, for example, we buried some of our felled trees, which are going to feed plants going forward. So instead of taking the trees away and then bringing fertilizer in, there's ways to recycle things. So maybe there's this idea of, I don't know, there might be something there, but if that sounds interesting, it might, you know, it might be timely. I feel like the wider global warming stuff, we're just in the state of not knowing what the next best thing to do is, but this is something that could be tangible for folks and relevant for folks in small things you can do.
And let's face it, I think a lot more people have gardens right now and may have started them and may not know what to do in the wintertime. And I know last year, Jim and I built a new giant garden bed on the side of my house because it's in the sun. Well, guess who didn't get dirt in it? Because the company went on break right before they were starting in the spring. So I've got a giant empty garden bed sitting there. I haven't been able to do any vegetables, but it's full of leaves and old trees and all the scraps I've picked up all year. I've filled with that, and so that I'll need less dirt. And so, you know, I don't think people realize that leaves and sticks make dirt. That's what dirt comes from. And, you know, so if you put that on your soil, it really makes it much easier to dig and plant in. And, you know, not rake your leaves to the street, you know, rake them in your beds and have them there. Of course, that's bad for my allergies, but I'm not going there.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, our whole backyard, the soil in our backyard is mostly the tree grindings and leaf mulch from the city. We have a pickup truck and we, you know, probably brought yards and yards and yards in to make our soil, which is just, if you looked out into my backyard, wow, it's just so green and everything's, you know, this is the year that the soil is really coming to its own and there's earthworms everywhere. And
Yeah.
But that could be something, you know, maybe a combination of that with asking some of the local master gardeners to share some tips. So then it's not just us, you know, I mean, we could, I don't know. So, I mean, I could work on it and have a draft for our next meeting.
Sure, I like that idea. I think if we wanted to highlight the work of other individuals not on the commission, I think that should be fine. We could have a little blurb and the name of the master gardener just to kind of identify where that information is coming from. That could be beneficial. I think that sounds like a good idea.
And there's something about seeing your own name or the name of somebody you know in a publication that provides a feeling of connection, which is always good, like, and ownership.
And that's is it the Portage County Master Gardeners?
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I'll point out that the yard waste transfer site, the service department has been doing deliveries for the first time. So people can now go onto the city website and fill out an online form to request a delivery, a truckload of the mulch, and they'll take it out to that resident.
Oh, have you put that on your Facebook page?
I don't believe so. I feel like we were trying to see how this first this first instance went. So far, just without advertising it on the Facebook page and only having it on the website, we've had about 60 requests.
Oh,
So I
There's a-
imagine if we shared it on Facebook, it would probably explode.
Yeah. Well, there you go, Nadine. You got to get a load from the city because that stuff breaks down into beautiful soil.
yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, I already paid somebody to do that, and I have a retaining wall in my backyard here that was made of wood and is rotting and falling down. So they were going to replace that with brick. So while they were doing all that hauling, I was like, well, haul dirt. You know, I got this huge garden bed, and I mean, it's really big.
Nice.
So it's going to be a lot more dirt than I could deal with myself. I'm too old. So it'd have to be somebody who's going to place it in the bed for me, because I can't haul all that dirt anymore. So that was why I paid somebody to do it. And, you know, I've talked to them, and they're just behind and having a hard time getting people back to work, I guess. So.
Well, Renee, if you wanted to take a try at that first draft, and then I believe we'll have enough time to meet again before July 10th, so we can discuss the draft at the next meeting and then make any finalizations before that if everyone's open to it.
Mhm. Excellent. Yeah, in fact, maybe I'll put something out to the environmental network as well about, we need someone with tips for sustainability with the, preparing our yards for the fall. So, Yay.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
That's my goal, to be a connector.
All right, so as far as new business, I have waste stream reform in business or bicycle friendly community. So waste stream reform, that was initially the item that Judy Nelson was talking about, and she had been involved with the Portage County group. I believe they were forming a ad hoc committee of their own to assist with the Bill Steiner at Portage County Recycling and the county commissioners. So I don't know where that stands right now. I haven't heard from Judy, but has anyone else been in contact with anyone involved with this effort?
I do have a question though about, I've been trying to support local businesses with takeout, and we get these number 5 non-recyclable containers, and they can't like sterilize and reuse them. I mean, it seems like there should be a way to, like with the same business or something, or have some sort of service or something where some of those containers that are in good shape could be reused. I know there's a health department thing, but I'm just wondering if there's something we could do to have that looked at again.
Sure. So you would say maybe research related to reusable takeout containers?
Yeah, something about, with reusable takeout containers. Like people could pay a deposit and return them or something. In Ithaca, we had an event in Ithaca, and there was a dish service where they would bring sterilized dishes in 5-gallon buckets, and you would use them. They were like melamine or something, like non-breakable plastic, and you would like scrape the stuff off into a compost bucket. You'd put the dirty dishes back in, and then it would go to a place that would sterilize them all and get them ready for another event. So I'm just wondering, I mean, it was a nonprofit, but I'm just wondering with all of the takeout, and that's going to be happening for a while, if there's, I'm not sure where like the leverage is to start that conversation.
Do you think the example you quoted from Ithaca, that wasn't with reusable containers, right? That was more just silverware and plates that restaurants would use in their dining?
Right, or you could order them for like a wedding or something, or a potluck, or restaurants could use them too, though. I mean, I could imagine there's heavier duty takeout containers also that the parts could be reused.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just, it seems like, I don't know. It's an idea, like ideas lying around and people can pick them up. You know, sometimes if people start talking about stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like for example, Family and Community Services is doing all these delivery meals. Like, what would it look like if they had, I'm assuming they're disposables, you know, I don't know, maybe it's Family and Community Services could do something. It just seems like that's a thing that the community needs. And I'm not sure how that could happen.
Well, I remember specifically to coffee, if someone came into Bentry Coffee with their own mug, then they would fill it. But I haven't followed up after the COVID-19 crisis, so I don't even know if they're doing stuff like that anymore as far as handling another cup. I would doubt it, but
No.
I feel like more people are now afraid than ever to handle something that's been handled by someone else.
Right, like even at Meijer, if I bring my own bags, that's fine, but I have to leave them in the cart and I have to pack them myself. So there's, I don't know, maybe that's an article down the road where we can, you know, talk with businesses about how there's a creative, like we don't have to solve it for people, but if we point at it and invite people into thinking about it as a, you know, probably a cost savings, definitely an environmental savings somehow, some way. I'm not, maybe this isn't the venue to talk about it, but you know, it's certainly something that's going to get worse now that we have more takeout.
I agree with you, Renee. It was something I thought about as well, about how many takeout containers there'd be. I've been pleasantly surprised that there's been a lot of paper ones, and people can compost them. They can't recycle them, but they could compost them if they're doing composting. So I think there are some things that, because of the change, we do have to think of. You know, all the commercials on TV have changed. They did a thing on 60 Minutes or Sunday Morning about that yesterday, how all the ad agencies had to change how they advertise. And, you know, I guess it's the same for what we write about. Those are the new things that people are concerned about. And even though we don't want to talk about it all the time, you can make hints at it. It doesn't have to be the whole gist of it. But you're right, that the waste that's created, I wonder too. And I remember you talking about that option with the in Ithaca. I remember you speaking of that once before. And you know, you would think with people jobless, that'd be a great job to start. And maybe there's money out there for things like that, or grants or something. And you just need some young people that have a lot of energy.
Yeah, maybe I'll bring that up with KE. I mean, the Kent Environmental Council historically has been good about getting stuff started, but I don't know.
Or even that would be one thing for the Kent State Sustainability Office. They have a whole major on that now too, and those kids are going to be looking for jobs. I mean, that's an idea worth presenting to somebody looking to profit. And I mean, they probably don't have any graduates yet. I don't think it's been around that long, but
no, that's a great idea. So maybe there's an opportunity for just a convergence of people, stakeholders in that conversation, including, I mean, the Kent Family and Community Services might be the where that might center, because they would be creating jobs. Sometimes they, you know, there's opportunities for employment for people who are working out of homelessness or other sorts of situations where they, you know, they get job experience at a nonprofit kind of situation and then work their way into the regular economy. So yeah, that sounds like something to, I don't know if it needs to be on the agenda. Maybe it's a subset of the waste stream reform, because part of it's stopping the waste in the first place, right?
Yeah, I agree. I think it can be moved as part of the waste stream reform, like another element of that.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But maybe if, as we're in conversations, look for opportunities to, like who might be some of the stakeholders who might be able to talk about how we can, at least in our community, find ways to not have so much waste, to partner with health department and maybe, the local businesses, and to make it, something that's safe, but also economical and also environmentally friendly. So it's a win-win for everybody.
Well, I think if we do some research and find out what's been done so far, and then bringing that to the health department. I know right now the health department is visiting all the different restaurants and bars and businesses downtown to make sure they're adhering to all the requirements of the order. So I think right now the restaurants and businesses are looking to the health department now more than ever for guidance. So if we maybe meet with the health department, talk to them about something that we see as evolving as this new industry of takeout and carry out and curbside become more important. And I would imagine after this, it would probably stay a lot more important. How are we going to adjust to that to make sure we are going to try to be more sustainable? So I remember specifically instances where at special events of the past, you can only use single-use items because having those reusable items was a form of contamination. So I think bridging the gap between making sure everyone's healthy and safe, but also being sustainable. I know that that's something the commission here and the health department could brainstorm together to think what's out there, what could we potentially use that could help both sides.
Mhm.
Mm.
Is it possible to have somebody from the health department come to one of our future meetings to help us understand what the concerns are?
Sure. Yeah, I could talk to our health department and see if maybe the next meeting, depending on availability, we might be able to have someone come and talk. I can do that.
It's a little easier with Zoom. Does that sound interesting to you, Nadine and Mim? I don't want to throw something in that isn't something that we all are interested in. Nadine's, how about you, Mim? Mim,
Ma'am?
are you interested in having us look into seeing how restaurants and other places can use reusable dishware? Can you hear us?
Hey, ma'am, can you hear us?
Yeah,
So we were wondering, would you be open to having a guest from the health department come to our next meeting in July to talk about ways the restaurants and businesses can be more sustainable with the new guidelines or just the current order of things with COVID? So I know Renee said it a lot better than I'm saying it now, but
yeah, it sounds good.
We could invite people, maybe we could also invite stakeholders to come and listen, because in Zoom it's a lot easier, right? So maybe some of the local restaurant folks or something, like just to maybe have more of a conversation. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, for help us know, but also I'm like maybe somebody from Family and Community Services to just hear what the possibilities might be, and it might get the creative juices going.
mm-hmm.
Would that be appropriate?
I think we're right now, the meetings that we're having on Zoom, we're kind of limiting them as much as possible just to make sure that we are making them secure and we don't run the risk of having someone on here that shouldn't be. So I think it can work, especially if we get a list of a couple of people that are already signed up to be in the meeting. So if that happens, then I think we can do it. But if it's something last minute where someone wants to come on and we haven't recognized them, then I would probably prefer not admitting that person.
Got it. So they could watch on YouTube, but anybody we would want to be part of the conversation. It might be a generative conversation is my hope. So,
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if we can get a health department person, and I can maybe suggest people and see if they're available, and then have you actually vet them and make sure that, give them the information. So the information for the meeting would come from you rather than any of us.
Yeah, that's right. And we would still have to adhere to the public comment sort of structure. So it, as constructive as a conversation would be, it wouldn't necessarily be in-depth conversation discussion. It would be more of kind of learning about what each side has to offer, have a couple of questions, and then we could have that conversation at another time, I think.
That's great.
So as far as the next new business item, the bicycle friendly community, that was something that we applied for at the beginning of the year. We got all the information together and ready and submitted it to the League of American Bicyclists. And we did that at the beginning of the year before COVID-19. So we heard from them. We got a response back on our application, and we are receiving the honorable mention designation. So it's the step right below the bronze level that the university currently has. So that means once we make some changes that they recommend in their report that's going to come to us in a couple of weeks, we will then be able to reapply and hopefully get the bronze level designation. So I think overall it was what we expected and we're happy with it. I think the application and the report card that comes out from it is going to be really helpful to help city council and residents learn what we have, what we don't have, and where we need to improve. So it'll be I would say impartial as opposed, or as far as kink goes, someone looking at the community that doesn't have a tie to it. So the league is good on presenting that information in a very clear way. So I'm excited to look at it and see what changes we can implement in the future. And the team that we had on the application included Melanie and Leah from the Office of Sustainability at Kent State. So they're going to be receiving that report too. And Melanie's already reached out to me saying that the types of changes they need to make are also the same that we need to make. So we're going to work together to cover both of those items together. So I think as far as having a bicycle advisory committee, we're thinking along the lines of having a joint committee of both Kent State and community residents. So instead of having two separate committees, we thought having one would be more beneficial, I think, in the long run. So overall, it's a positive thing, and we're happy for it. And we also were able to do a survey that residents could respond to directly to the league. So we'll see what those survey results pull up, and I'll show that to you as well. So I would expect that report card and survey results hopefully by the next meeting in July.
Good. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I did send the survey to my friend I know through meetup groups, and she's an avid bicyclist. I mean, she joins these groups, and she sent it out to 40 people, she said, in her biking group. So it'll be interesting to see how many filled it out from out, not many of them live here.
Mm-hmm.
So.
So as far as the bicycle friendly community, are there anything else on that one before we go to other business?
No.
That's exciting. Yay, yay, yay for Kent.
Yeah. All right, so now for other business, are there any items we see on the list that we want to either move from new business to old business, or remove entirely from the agenda, or recommend new items to the agenda?
Well, we don't know when we're going to attend the farmer's market, but do we remove that? Do we change it? I don't know.
I feel like in that instance, it's been there for so long that we're eventually going to
Okay.
go there again. It could probably stay on there. And especially with the new outdoor market going on right now, things are so fluid even now that they could change in a couple of months and it would make it so we would need that item again, I guess.
Okay.
Is everyone okay with the way they see the agenda now?
Yes.
Mim,
So are you ready for a motion to adjourn?
well, I wanted to make sure Mim was okay with the other items on the agenda too. Mim, are there any items you'd like to propose or change?
Not at the moment, no.
All right. Well, then I guess at this time, I would like to see if anyone would like to motion to adjourn the meeting.
I will move to adjourn the meeting.
Second,
I will second it.
Oh, I think Mim beat you to it.
Oh, you did, ma'am.
Go, Mim.
All right. All in favor of adjourning the meeting, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We successfully did our first Zoom meeting.
Yay.
Excellent.
All right. So right now, the next meeting currently is planned for the, well, let me look at my calendar real quick. So I believe it would be Monday, July 6th, but that is the weekend right after 4th of July. So would that be still open for everyone? Are you going on vacations?
I'm going nowhere.
I am, but not
I
that
have
week.
no idea.
What was that, ma'am?
I said I have no idea, maybe.
Okay. So right now, I'll reach out to Wilder and Andy, but we'll plan tentatively for July 6th.
You silly dog. Come here.
All right. Well, everyone, have a great night, and I will talk to you soon.
Good to see everybody.
Yeah, yep.
Take care. Be safe.